This is KEXP FM Seattle, around the world on the web at kexp.org. My name is Greg Vandy, in studio with Jake Xerxes Fussell.
All out on the old railroad and all out on the sea, all out on the old railroad, far as I can see. Swing and turn, Jubilee, live and learn, Jubilee. Swing and turn, Jubilee, live and learn, Jubilee. Wish I had a needle and thread, fine as I could sew my true love to my side, and down the road we'd go. A swing and turn, Jubilee, live and learn, Jubilee. Swing and turn, Jubilee, live and learn, Jubilee. My wife died on Friday night, Saturday she was buried, Sunday was my courting day, and Monday I got married. Swing and turn, Jubilee, live and learn, Jubilee. I'll swing and turn, Jubilee, live and learn, Jubilee. I'll swing and turn, Jubilee, live and learn, Jubilee. Swing and turn, Jubilee, live and learn, Jubilee. I'll swing and turn, Jubilee, live and learn, Jubilee. All right, this next song is called Raggy Levy. This is one that I learned from a couple named Doug and Frankie Quimby from a group called the Georgia Sea Island Singers. Raggy Levy, oh, to Raggy Levy. Raggy Levy, oh boy, just ragged as a jaybird. Mr. Sipple and I'm gonna build me a stone fence. In the morning, oh, soon in the morning. In the morning, when I rise, I'm gonna sit by the fire. Mr. Simple, and I'm gonna build me a stone fence. Sweet potato, oh, sweet potato. Sweet potato, oh boys, there's two in the fire. Mr. Simple, and I'm gonna build me a stone fence. Horse and buggy, oh, horse and a buggy. Horse and buggy, oh boy, they ain't no one to drive 'em. Mr. Simple, and I'm gonna build me a stone fence. Mama Dinah, oh, do Mama Dinah. Mama Dinah, you too old gal and I can't support ya. Mr. Simple, and I'm gonna build me a stone fence. Raggy Levy, oh, do Raggy Levy. Raggy Levy, oh boy, just ragged as a jaybird. Mr. Simple, and I'm gonna build me a stone fence.
All right, Jake Xerxes Fussell here in the Roadhouse on KEXP. That song, Raggy Levy, from the self-titled debut record from 2015, and then Jubilee, his version from the latest record is called Out of Sight, just out right now on Paradise of Bachelors. Jake, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me here.
It's great to have you. I've been wanting you on for a long time. Been playing your songs ever since the debut record. Now you're into number 3 now.
All right.
And they all sound great.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. A lot of people have come up to me out there in the community or through email on the show, and they pick you out as one of the artists they discovered on the show and they really sort of connect with. There's something about your music that I think gets to people.
Well, I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah. Tell us about how you started playing music. You have quite a background that we're going to get into, and there's lots of stuff to talk about. But how did you, hear the calling to pick up guitars and sing songs?
Well, I grew up in a musical environment. Both of my parents were sort of involved in the folklore world, documenting people who carried on certain traditions in rural southwest Georgia and South Alabama. A lot of that stuff was like sort of material culture type things, like quilters and basket makers and potters and that whole world. But some of it included music as well. And so I was lucky to be around a lot of really great traditional musicians when I was a kid, in addition to listening to everything else that was out there, like a lot of people. But I was particularly fortunate to know some older musicians who played things. And as the child of a folklorist, I got to ride around and meet people firsthand and learn some songs from them. So that's how I got into it. And when I got a little older, as a teenager, I got really into the whole recorded background of that story. So I, through that world, found out about people like Alan Lomax and, of course, Woody Guthrie and the sort of bigger world of traditional music documentation, John Cohen, who we just lost, people like that.
Yep. Yeah. Your father is Fred Fussell, a pretty famous folklorist, and your mother and sister, they played music as well.
Oh, my mother and sister don't actually play. Well, I should say that they don't play music, but they they wouldn't admit to playing music. They were involved in my musical upbringing in a big way. Both of them are artists. My mother and sister are both quilters.
I see.
And my mother actually came from a kind of a musical family in some ways. My grandmother had been a part of a gospel quartet back in the pre-World War II days, I imagine, when she was a youngster. And then, so yeah, there was music around, but my introduction to it was largely through this sort of world of documentation. And
Right, yeah. Yeah, I guess it's music, but it's also, we're really talking more about the bigger picture of culture, right? Specifically Southern culture, because you grew up in Columbus and now you're in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. But I wanted to name drop some of the really pretty amazing people you've played with as a younger person when they were much older musicians. Like Precious Bryant is one person I would love to find out. I wish we had an hour to talk about really about her, but also Etta Baker and the Como Mamas as well, right?
yeah, Precious Bryant, I knew from the time I don't remember meeting her. I knew her my whole life, pretty much growing up. She lived 20 miles from where I grew up, and outside of a community called Toppleton, Georgia, in Talbot County, which is one of the neighboring counties to Columbus, where I grew up. And of course, there's a guy named George Mitchell who located her in the late '60s and recorded her, and he recorded a lot of rural blues musicians in that part of Georgia in the late '60s, and then later in the '70s and early '80s with my dad, they did a lot of folklore work together in that area. And so I grew up knowing Precious and then really loving her music as a kid. And then when I got into playing guitar myself and became interested in older styles, at least wanting to play them, I was fortunate to know her and used to ride out to her place in Talbot County almost on a weekly basis for a long time and would play music with her. And she was never like a formal teacher and didn't really like sit down and show me how to do things, but would play songs and I could try to catch up with her. And that was actually a really great way to learn because you have to learn quickly.
Was she a church person?
She was a church person intermittently. She grew up in the church and she knew a lot of old spirituals and was great at playing gospel guitar. The particular church she grew up in actually didn't allow instruments, but she had played as part of a group with her sisters, and they used to go around to different churches and were even in some school talent shows and things like that. Her sisters, many of them were really great singers, and a couple of them play guitar as well, and still do, I guess. But yeah, she was a great musician. She was, I guess you should say she was partial to blues, but she also knew a lot of great gospel songs and could play and sing them.
Yeah. One of the things about you and your music, I think, which stands out than sort of anyone else that's going to, follow that sort of folk process thing and make songs and music is that you are such an interpreter, right? And the fact that you make these songs your own songs, and that I think many people listening who have your albums may not even realize that these are all traditional songs, but they're Jake songs, and that's really the sort of the real trick, I think, for people to doing sort of covering other material, older material, is finding that sort of thing in the song and then making that thing your thing in the interpretation. Is that kind of what you do?
Yeah, I mean, there are different approaches to doing what I do. Some people are sort of real staunch purists, I guess, and they would want to have their version sound exactly like the pre-war 78 from 1923 or whatever. And
there are those people.
There are those people, and there's a time and place for that. I don't knock it because I've tried it, and that's what I did initially, because you kind of have to do that when you're starting from square one. But for me, in my own personal creative artistic growth or whatever you want to call it, it's more interesting for me to try to interpret things on personal, emotional level. Otherwise, I can't really get to it. It doesn't seem like it's mine, or it doesn't seem like it's relevant to me on a personal level if I'm trying to impersonate something from 1930. That said, I think there is something to be said for, learning a fiddle tune note for note. And sometimes that's actually a really good place to start because, there is a real beauty in those old songs, especially old recordings from the pre-war commercial recording era, or whatever you want to call it. But one way that I view that, I guess part of what informed my view of all that is the fact that I was around living musicians as a kid who were in a traditional setting, and I could see that songs did change and they weren't really set in amber. And you could hear one version one day, and then like Precious might play it different 2 weeks later. It wasn't really set in stone.
Yeah.
Verses were floating, and riffs sort of came and went. Keys would change. So that really contributed to my understanding of how music functioned, and still does. So these things change according to how you're feeling, or it's a personal sort of intuitive process.
Yeah.
As much as it is historical or anything else.
Yeah. Clearly, we can talk forever about this stuff. Let's get to another song. This is a song called River St. John. It's also on the latest record called Out of Sight. It's on Paradise of Bachelors. And also, Jake, what I like about you is you're also a real digger, right? This is a song that you found. You dug for this one, and you found, and you did it. Tell us just a brief intro of this one, please.
Yeah, this is from a Works Progress Administration recording made by folklorist and documentarian named Stetson Kennedy, who did a lot of work in Florida. And this is a guy named Hardin W. Stuckey singing this song in Jacksonville, Florida in 1939. It was actually a street cry, a fish vendor's cry. And I heard it a couple of years ago and thought it was really poetic and beautiful, and kind of wanted to see if I could do my own take on it. So.
Let's hear it. This is Jake Xerxes Fussell on KEXP.
I got fresh fish this morning, ladies. They are gilded with gold, and you may find a diamond in their mouths. They are just from the river St. John, St. John's. They are just from the river St. John's. They are just from the river St. John, St. John's. They are just from the river St. John's. I got mullets this morning, ladies. They are fresh and fine. You can buy them off a dime. They are just from the river St. John, St. John's. They are just from the river St. John's. They are just from the river St. John, St. John's. They are just from the river St. John's. I got fresh fish this morning, ladies. They are gilded with gold, and you may find a diamond in your mouth. They are just from the river, St. John, St. John's. They are just from the river, St. John's. They are just from the river, St. John, St. John's. They are just from the river, St. John's.
Jake Xerxes Fussell on KEXP in the Roadhouse. Great to have you here, Jake. That song, River St. John, from the new album called Out of Sight. I wonder if ladies ever did find diamonds in those fish. It's a good selling point.
Yeah.
You are well, you studied under one of my favorite people of all time. Probably the guy that has inspired me the most in terms of music and culture. His name is Les Blank, the filmmaker. And when I was talking to Brendan at Paradise, he told me that, and I was like, wow, we got so much to talk about, because Les Blank is just a hugely influential filmmaker, because he did it sort of differently than anyone else. And tell me about him and how you got to, were you like an apprentice, or what you're doing with him?
Not in any formal sense. I was more of a friend. Les Blank came down to my hometown in the mid-'90s when I was still in high school, actually, and to show some films at the local university there, where my mother was a teacher, actually. And of course, I went with my parents because I was interested in Lightning Hopkins and Werner Herzog and all the stuff that he had documented, and got to meet him. And then some of the people in the art department asked my dad to show him around because he was going to be in town for a few days. And my dad took him over to Alabama, which is right across the river, to see this guy named Butch Anthony, who's a self-taught artist over there. And Les became really enamored with Butch. And so he started coming down like a few times a year just to film Butch. And that's actually a film that's not been released because Les died a few years ago, and I think it's still in the works. There might be a version that's going to come out at some point. But anyway, years later, I was living in the Bay Area for a little while and playing music and stuff, and he generously got me a job working as a clerk at Down Home Music, which is where in El Cerrito, where our Hooli Records is located. And Flower Films, his office was upstairs.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
So I got to hang out with him a lot there, and we just kind of became buddies over the years and got to go eat dinner at his house a lot. He was a great cook and just a real character. I miss him a lot. He was a friend, but also kind of like a hero too, because his films are so moving, and I was lucky to get to know him.
Right, yeah. Hot Pepper is probably the first one I saw, and still my favorite, because
beautiful.
He just really gets into places and documents and shows you such the real deal that it's sort of mesmerizing, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to get closer.
Yeah.
Also, you're a DJ.
Yep.
Like
that's
me.
Right.
You got a radio show.
I do.
Tell me about that.
It's called Fall Line Radio, and it's on WHUP, which is a little low-power community station, FM station out of Hillsborough, North Carolina, which is near where I live. And the station's only been in existence for a few years now, but my show is weekly show for 2 hours every Wednesday afternoon. I play what I call music of the American South and beyond, which is kind of like I can play whatever I want, really. But I do a lot of field recordings, and sometimes I'll have themed shows, certain historical themes, like, or sometimes there'll be loose abstract themes, like songs about plants for 2 hours or something like that. But other times, I did one recently that was about American Indian music of the Southeast things like that. So it's an opportunity for me to just explore stuff that I'm already interested in, but to do it publicly and to share things that I'm passionate about.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm not like a veteran radio person like y'all, but it's a real trip getting to do that. It's a treat.
Is it online?
It is online. Yeah,
What's
they
that?
have a website, whupfm.org.
Okay, cool. What great magazine do you like better, Oxford American or Bitter Southerner?
Oh man, I don't know if I can say without
You probably know both of the
stirring
camps.
up some trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like both of them.
Okay. William Tyler produced your first record. How did you guys meet and work that out?
I lived in Oxford, Mississippi for about 10 years. I went to graduate school there, and I was like hanging out there. And towards the end of my tenure there, I was looking forward to moving to North Carolina, but this guy, William, was like hanging around town because he had family in that area. His folks are from Mississippi. I think they went to University of Mississippi back in the 60s, I guess. But I knew who he was a little bit. I've heard a couple of his records, or maybe his first 2 albums, I guess. And he was sort of hanging around town. Around that same time, I signed up with Paradise of Bachelors and was getting ready to make my first record. And they were like, I think a little bit scared of what I was going to do because they didn't really know me or anything. They just heard some demos I'd sent them. And they thought I might need some direction in the studio. And of course, Williams grew up in Nashville. And so anyway, we got together and he wound up producing my first record. And it was a lot of fun, especially because I didn't have like any real direction with it. I just had these songs, and I said, whoever wants to play on it, you think would be good backing musicians. I trust your intuition on all that. And so he wound up getting a bunch of Nashville guys together, which is really great. Like people like Chris Scruggs, who's a really wonderful musician who plays with Marty Stewart's band. And then Hoot Hester, a great fiddler, who probably did play with Marty Robbins. He played with Ray Price and a lot of people like that, a lot of the old school Nashville people. So that was pretty wild to get to do that. But yeah, William's a good buddy. I don't see him that much these days because he lives in L.A. and I'm not on the West Coast very much, but maybe I'll see him in a couple of nights.
Yeah. Well, we could go on. We should play the last song, I think. But
Yeah.
I wanted to mention how your father did the charcoal sketch artwork on the latest record called Out of Sight. And also you always pick really cool artwork for the album covers throughout for the first 3. Anyway, that's super interesting, I think. But let's get into the song.
Okay.
This last song is one of my favorites. It's actually a question. Have you ever seen peaches growing on a sweet potato vine, right? That's the question.
That's the question.
But it's also a song. You want to do it?
Yeah, it's going to take me a minute just to retune here. So.
All right. Jake, Xerxes Fussell is on tour right now with Daniel Norgren, and we're just actually following Daniel in the studio, and that was quite a session. And I guess we're not going to be able to. This is playing back quite a bit in the future, so that tour will be long gone. But you are also going to be going on tour soon with
Joan Shelley.
Joan Shelley with Nathan Salisbury. So look for Jake out there on the road with that tour.
Have you ever seen peaches growing on a sweet potato vine? Have you ever seen peaches wake up, woman, take your big leg off of mine. Well, I love that woman. I can't call her name. Hell, I love that woman. I can't call her name. She's a married woman, but I love her just the same. And I give you my money and all my loving too. Hell, I give you my money and all my loving too. Oh, tell me, baby, what more can I do? Have you ever seen peaches growing on a sweet potato vine? Have you ever seen peaches growing on a sweet potato vine? I'll wake up, woman, take your big leg off of mine.
Jake Xerxes Fussell, Have You Ever Seen Peaches Grown on a Sweet Potato Vine? From his second album. It's called What in the Natural World on Paradise of Bachelors. Jake, you're one of my faves. It's great to have you in studio. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks so much, Greg. I really appreciate it.
Check Jake on tour with Joan Shelley soon. This is KEXP FM Seattle.
Discover great music at KEXP.org.